So good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the second event that we call the revival of the cities, as reviving the societies. And we have a lot of evidence that cities and communities are the nucleus of the society, which is necessary to restore and rebuild. We had this first event together with the New Time and International Mayors Summit, organized with the WNISCF, and we spoke of the values and principles of recovery, what it should be based on. I mean, the recovery, we always say that we don't want to rebuild the old, but what the new should be there. And we spoke with the philosophers, intellectuals of our time. So today we have this new stage, and we'll talk about how all these things should be translated into urban language, you know, the language of urban senses. How should it be reflected in architecture, let's say? What the streets should look like, where the community and society should interact. How can we involve them to recovery? For me, it's a big pleasure today to discuss all this with Юліан Чаплінський, who is the architect and urbanist, and he's a blogger as well. And thank you for this awareness-raising component. We really lack this in our country. And he also used to be a deputy minister of community and territory development. He took care of European integration area. So we also have Ганна Бондар. I just want to say that everything that is related to the latest urban, the latest urban trends, it's always about gender equality. It's great that we have Anya here. She knows everything about urban planning and development. She's an architect, and she's a current MP. She's a member of the parliament, and she can tell us a lot about how it looks, how it's perceived by the government and the parliament. Урс Томан. I made a joke here that he is the urbanist from Van de Wetering Bureau and a co-founder. But he is a little bit a Vinnytsia guy for us, you know, and a Lviv guy as well, because Urs worked a lot in Ukrainian cities, and this external opinion, external expertise is important. Quite often we may, you know, become colorblind, but we take something for granted, but we need to have an external perspective as well, and Urs' opinion is of huge importance. Юрко Филюк, I suspect you're not an urbanist. It's not your degree, I guess, but you are the one who actually builds communities, shapes it, and you did it so well in Ivano-Frankivsk. First with the Warm City Initiative, Urban Space 100, and with a big project, Promprylad.Renovation, revitalization of plants, and the social recovery is important as well. So I'm really glad that we have this company, great company today. Words of gratitude to New Time for making this together, and just saying that at New Time YouTube channel, you can actually you can have our Ukrainian stream, but on Facebook you can get us in English. We have this chance, you know, to present our talk in a couple of languages. And New Time, meaning новое время, новый час, just not to confuse, okay? So, great. You know, I wanted to talk about the following thing, how to structure today's talk. The full-scale invasion actually makes us rebuild the cities destroyed by the war. But I would like to talk also about the settlements destroyed by people for so many years, which have been destroyed for many, many years, and other people said yes for that. And it wasn't working good, and we had some criticism about those cities and towns. And today, part of us lives somewhere and going abroad, so we have a little bit different picture. I'd like to start with this ice-breaking question. What is the city? What is the town? Who does it belong to? Who actually shapes this demand for the urban space, for the urban environment? We have this free format, free mic, let's say. So if someone wants to be a volunteer, someone wants to be the first, you're so welcome. Urs should be the first, I guess. Maybe for him to tell, like, who should own the city, who should own the urban space. Добре, дякую, дякую. Дякую за те, що даєте мені слово.
Short that you will have the opportunity to bring in also your idea. So I think, first of all, the city is a place where different people live, very different people, a place of, historically, a place of trade where people work and where economic activities go on. And the city is also an environment. An environment, on the one hand, a built environment, on the other hand, also very important, I think, for that all the feeling that we have in the city is also kind of nature, kind of greenery in the city. Who is it? Who's it? The city? Yeah, by thinking we are talking here about the European city, about the Ukraine European city. The city is the citizens. So it's the people who live in the city in a way, and they are also forming daily life, forming this environment through their actions. So please jump in, my dear colleagues.
Окей, ну давайте, можливо, я... Так, я, власне, як не...
I'm the only urbanist who's not a professional urbanist, maybe. For me, it's easier to give some definitions, you know, maybe from a different perspective. Once Viktor Zotov presented the statement that I really feel so much, that the city is a body. It's like an urban body, you know, an integral entity, and we try to perceive it in such a way. Why this statement is important? Because the body, you know, the entity, it has certain complexity. Like many, many, many other different people, different processes are there. Many different components are combined in one city, in one settlement. If we intervene, if we have an intervention into this body being done, we have to understand that we will have some side effects, or gentrification effects, let's call it. Relatively positive, relatively negative. These can be, but basically, it gives us an understanding that we don't have simple solutions here. We always have to analyze it in the context and be very careful with that, okay? Because we live in the period, I hope it's coming to its end. Quite often, we are tempted to find linear, simple solutions. A city itself, you know, is a complex system. It's a body, you know, it's an entity. When you try to do something with a city, you have to take into account all these chain reactions, which may be as a consequence, which may arise as a consequence. So, if we build something in a wrong way, we affect the whole community. This is very important about these side effects, you know. We'll mention this again, and I'll just add that quite often, even we have good intentions, very good intentions, because my colleagues, urbanists, you know, when they decide something, they want to solve the problem, they, in parallel line, they may create like another challenges by doing so. So, you know, when we speak of the connections, of the brother opinion, and I feel it in the same way. It's very sensitive. It's very holistic. You know, you have to think of these consequences at many layers, at many levels. How this or that action or initiative what consequences it may cause initially. Okay, Anna, I can just add. On the one hand, if we close our eyes like children, imagining a city, like a city that's something that consists of so many buildings. It's like this is a city in a physical dimension, but our cities on planet Earth, these all are created by people, not by aliens. And for me, it was always interesting how in the very same period, different cities look differently, you know? different style, different architecture, because the communities created those cities, they had some peculiarities. That's why all the cities have their personality, their identity, which then shapes the future generations of people, of dwellers. So that's why we have such a diversity. We have so many Ukrainian cities and towns, but when we speak of the Lviv, Vinnytsia, Kyiv, Odessa, we can have this, we have this clear portfolio of each city, clear profile. So cities are shaping future generations. So why in the cities we always have conflicts? Because cities, as for me, this is like a crossroads where so many different interests cross and overlay. This is the value of the city, because cities give diversity and variety of activities, variety of opportunities. It's a point of growth for the civilization, let's say, but it leads to conflicts and clashes, and that's the complexity, you know, how to combine the interests of so many city dwellers, because if you want to say, like we're saying, my city Lviv, my city Odessa, my city Kyiv, everyone says my city. Everyone believes it's his or her city, but individual interests must be taken into account, or heard at least, you know, the opinions. I think that is the most complicated, that's the most painful thing, you know, the most painful aspect and the most problematic. Yes, definitely, I agree. Speaking of the cities, this is like an eternal story. We can start from various positions, and being just an average dweller of Lviv, remembering my childhood years, you perceive the city in one way and you have certain demands to your city, or even requirements. When I became an architect, a practitioner, I had like another perception. I had another idea of what is correct. When I became a state official, and I saw it from a different perspective, and there are other opinions and views, let's say. And but today, if just to conclude, the city is mostly perceived as perceived by us as points of economic activity. So cities mostly are about acceleration of these processes. It's about providing services at a maximum point, you know, at a certain location. But gradually, cities gain some other senses, you know, and I have this metaphor. When I read Sigmund Freud, one of his publications, the essence of the publication is that the essence of human civilization, of culture, is about negotiation. It's how you negotiate, how you set rules. When we create rules for behavior, moral rules, and benchmarks, you know, and it appears that not all these actually work, not all these fit. Someone will definitely make it hard with the rules. Yes, we need to have some processes in our life, but the society, maybe some processes that people initiate, this is not agreed by the society. Then that's when we have these conflicts and threats. Cities, this is about constant change of negotiation, constant permanent process of creating a negotiation, an agreement. Everything else, economy, material, prosperity and welfare, cultural, historical heritage, it goes later when we have this negotiation or agreement. With this criterion, I can see that cities in the world where they have this agreement and where they don't, you know? Even when developers quite often, they love to show, look like it works in America. It flourishes because it's the capitalism, the market economy, the freedom, but this is a lie, because they have so many agreements and negotiations. These are reflected in a different format and not a copy-pasted ones. And we have a paradox. The more negotiations and agreements, the more of these regulatory acts we have, like different documents, like different strategies or policies, zoning plans, or like decisions of sessions of the city council, whatever. But we have this paradoxical process then. Over-regulation, it leads to. In the cities where it's over-regulated, it becomes inconvenient. And businesses start running away from these cities, and the city dynamics is changing. And it then works like that, that the development of the cities, so we have like this parabolic line. First, they want to get some freedom and liberation and like full democracy, then a lot of chaos they have. People start conflicting, they start negotiating and getting agreements, and then the opposite process comes. Negotiations lead to overregulation. And if metaphysically speaking, cities, it's about negotiation. It's about how you conclude a contract with each other. Okay. So you gave this answer, each of you, and I think we all agree that cities, it's about people. These are shaped by people. These are consumed by people, let's say. And I just want to understand, what are these people? What is the community? Just using the example, my example, using Kyiv like an example. Recently we've spoken of Kyiv as New Berlin. And someone laughed, someone was angry with that, you know, depending on the depth of integration. And we have two parallels. Kyiv is a cool city in a couple of aspects. They have great transformations within the last years. Festivals, street food festivals, music festivals, you know, a lot of spaces of cool, high level. In Botanical Garden we have concerts, these roof concerts, great restaurants we have, and we all feel sad because we can't go to those restaurants with perfect services. But we have this chaotic construction process. We park where we want, and we try to prove each other that, okay, this is my right, nobody is about to punish me. And we even have these marches for Kyiv and the environmental marches. Environment is not in the best condition, you know. The left bank is like a ghetto, so I live on the 23rd floor in Kyiv. And in 10 years, the landscape changed. It became very concrete and glass. You know, I've seen once, you know, those architectural sites. Now I don't. If people have these cities, these are inaccessible, quite often like concrete and glass, no greenery. What does it tell about us as a community? We just say yes to that. We can't negotiate. There's no agreement. Or this is the agreement, we say, like, this is okay for us. What can we conclude? What conclusion can we make about the community who says yes to live in such a city? I can continue. I think that, yes, this is the problem of community and the lack of tools and even lack of its self-identification. So we've had these processes we're expecting from the authority. We think that our authority, our council, should like handle everything. The place I live, my yard, the parking lot, like that they can handle anything. We haven't had this tradition. Within 30 years, we haven't shaped a tradition to, this participatory approach is not there. We can't join, you know, to initiate something good still on a local level. So if you want to gather people to like have a verbal argument with your local council, that's okay. But gather people living in the same house just to improve something, that's hard. What is the authority? Representatives of the community as well. Within these 30 years, they use these still Soviet practices, Soviet-type practices. How it used to be previously when we had the Communist Party, how it worked. And this model worked when everything was owned by the state, when everything was in the hands of state. So the state decided everything, you know, all the land was state-owned, you know, all decisions were made by state at different levels. And this, as we call it, the administrative economy, you know, it worked then. But still, somewhere it exists, and the leftovers of it. And now we've like lost this concept of collectivism, you know, and now we have the individual property idea, but nothing was done to educate people how to own that property, how to dispose of it, you know, individually, like to explain what is collective, what is individual. People had no experience, and they don't have experience. So I think that in Kyiv is that communities simply don't recognize that. We can stimulate communities to create, to shape themselves. We have the tools for it, you know, into decision makers. But the only mechanism that works is still of that Soviet type. Anya, do you have the same impression? You've seen Kyiv developing, you've seen it from inside, and so many things you had to stand for and maybe fight for it. Did this community change like within the last years? What did you see? What the trend is? About the trend, I'll tell you, and as I feel the situation, you know, my personal feeling, the trend, how does it look? I remember very well, right after Maidan, we had this huge amount of people, number of people, city dwellers who were not experts in urban development or architecture or planning, who started doing something. Not always it was professional or super great, but still these initiatives, there was a whole flow of these. We've got these in the Department of City Planning. Every day we had several people coming to us saying we want to do something in the city. This was a very important impetus, you know, after the Maidan. Spring 2014 that was, if I remember. And this flow strengthened, and today in Kyiv, basically, comparing to the total number of dwellers, but this is like a powerful still community, joining NGOs and separate experts, separate people, separate individuals. The community that fights for the city as an entity, fighting for the city dwellers' rights. We have the environmental component, and we have people who want to save the historical heritage and cultural heritage. And also those who want to have more pedestrian zones, you know. Within the last 8 years, this community merged. I don't remember it existing. We had some separate initiatives, but now we have the community. The reason for what you mentioned, Irina, the global reason is that in the city, in Kyiv, we still don't have the management, you know. You know that Kyiv is managed, all the processes are managed by separate law, regulated by separate law on the capital, and the algorithm is different from other cities. We don't have these district councils anymore, and Kyiv City State Administration like merges a lot of functions there, and it actually prevents that necessary conflict that we have between local self-governance, like in Mykolaiv, and the regional state administration. We don't have this like working conflict or working tension, and it looks like an anarchy, you know, in some way. And absence of these district councils and lower components of self-governance system, people are not very well educated. They don't know what they can do. The MP in the local city council, he has a very tight schedule, kind of a neat one. And this lack of education, it leads to both ways. Nobody does nothing, nobody affects anything in the city, or the situation radicalizes. What is the reason for chaotic construction in the city and low quality decisions made? you know, for the city planning area. That in Kyiv we don't have any legitimate document in the city planning area. We have the general plan adopted in 2000, and we can't execute this plan. We can't like complete it because 3.5 thousand of construction of land plots actually the purpose of its use was changed, so the draft of general plan is highly criticized, not adopted. The historical and architecture basic plan still not adopted, and all the detailed territory plans, these contradict the applicable general plan. The zoning plan was designed and was not adopted. In Kyiv today we don't have these common rules that Julian mentioned. No standardized rules and no standardized, and we have this manual, you know, handling. Everything is handled in a manual mode. The community unfortunately still doesn't even know how to fight that. It's always for us easier to stand against than stand for something. Without a general plan, it's even worse and worse and worse. I think two big reasons: no functioning local self-government in a city, and lack of urban planning documents. There's no motivation for MPs to draft it, to handle those issues. As far as I understand correctly, even if we had this will in the community, some, you know, for people even to riot, to protect parks and so on, we still don't have these mechanisms. Even if we had that impetus, like in the community, they wouldn't change anything anyway. You know, I may even like present a picture in the vacuum, but still, a perfect picture is when a protest does not lead to protest, but when after protest you have certain proposals drafted. And we must have this mutual understanding. The local administration should take a step forward, the one that is responsible for the documents drafting. And also the community should take a step forward. We have all the formats for it. And we may have public consultations, live discussions. If you don't like something about this neighborhood, like, let's talk what you want to have there. What would be acceptable with consideration of the landowner's opinion and so on. Let's look for compromise. And create a draft document, you know, turning red spots into green spots. But nobody does that. So it's really a serious flaw of city administration on one hand. On the other hand, not so many constructive proposals we have. Definitely, this is sad. This sounds sad, and I feel sad that in the world where everyone, we talk so much about participatory approach, that this is a good thing for us, but it's still hard to achieve changes and to involve communities. Yurko, in Ivano-Frankivsk, do you have like a similar situation, or it's different? Because from what we observe, like externally, we see what's happening in Frankivsk. It seems different. We think that there is a cool community, people are joining, and they do a lot of great projects, and the city is funding some urban changes and like finding money. So is it a real situation, or it's like another dimension there, dimension of participation? So maybe Promprylad and Worm City is like an island of the community, of those active people where they gather, where they try to affect the whole thing, to make Ivano-Frankivsk a city for people. Okay, I just want to say that in my opinion, it's not that sad, it's not that tragic, and I'll try to answer in the context of Kyiv and Frankivsk both. Because, yes, these are cities that live in different dimensions. There are certain differences. Kyiv is the capital, and the city is a hostage like any other capital of France. But some principles, these coincide. Frankivsk just similarly We still have this chaotic construction as well. But maybe they started doing it a little bit more rationally. It's less chaotic than in Kiev. You asked, why do we have such things in Kiev or elsewhere we don't like? Well, in my opinion, city is a reflection. And these spatial solutions and the quality of life, this is the reflection always of the quality of the society, the top level quality. But this reflection is the consequence of the previous period. Again, once I asked Viktor Zotov, you know, why, like, we have a lot of high quality architecture which was created in the Soviet period, and right now we don't have examples of high quality modern architecture within the independence period. And his answer was that in Soviet period they had the pre-Soviet school of architects, you know, but in the 1990s, when the Soviet Union died, everything was destroyed, and there was certain vacuum, certain gap. And only now we try to shape or establish the new Ukrainian architectural school or even tradition. Therefore, if we look at the independence period, we had 1990s, which are very destructive for all the processes. We came through Soviet Union where the trust was destroyed, and I love the statement that city, as Julian says, is a bunch of agreements, a bunch of negotiations. If we talk about the period of active new quality establishment for the civic society, starting from 2014, we've had that flow, we had that wave. We still don't have so much time there, you know, to even establish these complex agreements and negotiations in the super complex, like, topic, city planning, because so many interests are there. After the 1990s, this was a compensatory phase. First, we need to create material base, and we close eyes, we ignore everything else, even the chaotic construction. So the private capital is shaping the urban planning process. It's still a trend, we all observe this, but still, to me it seems that in various Ukrainian cities, some are more, some are less, new neuron links start shaping, new agreements, new communication platforms. Intersectoral, it's important, where we start creating new social protocols, including those like where we want to live. If briefly speaking of Frankivsk, we first were warming up the city, preparing the city to even start talking together, have this joint discussion. In the post-Soviet period, when the trust was completely destroyed, the interpersonal, interinstitutional was destroyed, we had first to show people that it seems like we can talk together about something, try doing something from small to big, and achieve some results. And this is the 9th year of this work, and we now can talk about more complex things as Ivano-Frankivsk's development strategy. And we even try to discuss it in a very broad intersectoral circle with all key stakeholders. We still have a lot of work to do. And the city of future, you know, we dream of the perfect one. We have to do a lot before we actually have this perfect city. A lot of steps, a lot of talks, and as Julian mentioned, this is the dynamic process. Agreements are shaped, the situation's changing, you have to get new agreements all the time. So what we have in Frankivsk is we have a social perspective, definitely. People start believing that they can influence something, they can work together. And basically this works. And this is a lot. Our task is to continue with it in the same pace. Okay, do you have a recipe? I don't like the word recipe. How did it happen in Frankivsk? Involvement of community at such a level to drafting the city strategy, this is a good indicator. And in other cities, we maybe have these processes, but they are formal or declarative just for visibility, like a facade, you know. In Frankivsk, it's deeper. What was the reason? So the authority decided, the authority wanted, or this is a long process of interaction, or the community, or like these are the micro communities who started pushing this, who started putting that pressure, and then they were involved in process. It's really interesting to understand how it works in one cities but doesn't work in other. Okay, so to me it seems that the key thing here is the bottom-up movement. If we analyze Ukrainian experience, Lviv was the first city, by the way, where they started shaping the environment for changes. And these affected directly the urban agenda, you know? And when we started doing this, it was already for 10 years in Lviv. They had this powerful community, cultural, urban community, business space. They had perfect one. So for us, it was clear that we need to start at the bottom, go up, and joining people, merging them, using certain interests, you know, to have this interest-based dialogue. And then we were scaling it up bit by bit. And then we understood that we don't need just have to one space, you know, but to help to create different spaces and environments. One of the important factors was the transfer, how to call it, I'll think, from presumption to initiative. Previously, when the trust was destroyed, any initiative that was mentioned in the public space, there was a lot of criticism instantly, a lot of negative stuff, because people always suspected something there, you know, tried to find a hidden motive, a political, economic motive, because they had this traumatic experience. When we've overcome this, in the city, we changed this culture. And initiative is really welcome today. People discuss things, and this was the transfer from standing against to standing for. Like, let's think, like, how can we do it? Let's change something. Let's do something. And sometimes we play, we even use this local competitive spirit, like, I can do better and I can do better. Just start competing. I'll give you the last example. Initially, we launched the initiative with facade passports, with these banners, and we made a couple of examples showing how it can be done. We had a visual guideline. We realized that quite often the licensing agency says, why not, but never give the sample. And we try to visually explain it. And entrepreneurs started giving us like requests to design these banners, and then we found out there's nobody to design it. So we had a designer and an architect in our team, and he actually designed these free of charge by request. After 3-4 years, we finally got these facades with high quality banners, appealing to our guideline, saying that we designed the banner, we did not reach the worm city, and this was like about this competitive spirit. But for us, it was a victory. It means that we launched a new protocol, a new trend for new culture for these banners, and automatically the society starts replicating it. The next step we met the mayor, with architects, and with the head of utility services, saying, we're not ready to do your job for you. And we synchronized the official requirements to banners with our guideline to get rid of contradictions and controversies, transfer the technology of design, and this process is developing. Step by step, city is getting rid of that visual litter, you know, and yeah, of low quality banners. By the way, in Poland, I noticed that they have this network of small shops called Żabka, and they have horrible green banner, you know, standard banner. It's everywhere, and in some neighborhoods, but elsewhere in historical neighborhoods, it's different. It doesn't close the facade, it doesn't cover the facade, and it's really interesting. I'm thinking about your words right now. Urs, to you, let's say, can we have a situation when in Zurich they will build a multi-storied building illegally and the community says and stands against? Or you have the rules that it will never be built. What can we get from Zurich? What can we learn from this city?
Okay. Yes, also in Zurich, such situation appear when the community doesn't agree with a project. I think usually in our systems, these discussions are appearing before the process of building. But we have quite a lot in Zurich of examples when, especially in recent years, where we have in the city a big process of densification. So we have the main policy even on the national level, and which is delegated then also to the cities, that we don't almost not allowed anymore for greenfield development. So all the growth that we have in the cities, we have to build inside the already built fabric. And then we have several, of course, sometimes this makes quite a shift in scale. And we have this not in my backyard mentality also in Switzerland, like probably everywhere in the world. It's kind of probably in Switzerland even more than in other places. So we have, of course, a lot of skeptical reactions in neighborhoods where such plans appear. What we have in Switzerland in general, of course, we have quite on the one hand sophisticated, but on the other hand also with a long tradition. These processes of negotiations, of participations, then even with the end, at the end, if no other solutions are found with referendums, where the community has a big influence what is possible. Probably it's not so often, but it also happens concerning housing building. There is quite a prominent example of kind of an architect's idea of a very huge building in a neighborhood, which, for example, architects all around Switzerland found it a very good idea. Just the neighborhood did not agree, and in the end, it was a competition result, also won by competition. So in the end, everything had to be stopped, and all the planning process starts from new with kind of all the typologies to try. So we have this definitely we have this challenge also in Switzerland, but we have quite strong here. We have the institutions who are work somehow to negotiate this process. But one also we are paying kind of a price. If you ask a lot of people around the world, they say Switzerland is probably quite boring. Everything is well organized, it fits tone in tone, and so. But in a way, it's also we don't risk a lot because of this.
Experience of work. When you worked with the Ukrainian cities, is there a demand from the community, or maybe which new tools do we need to involve community? This is an important moment for recovery. We'll just go to recovery and rebuilding issue a little bit later, but your impression, external impression, what tools do we lack still, and what do we need to do to involve the community?
I think, and it's also a bit referring to the question that you asked concerning Kyiv. And so I think in general in Ukraine there is a huge potential, now deficit, but the potential for the future. It's in the aspect everything what's around infrastructure, I think. A lot of, in my opinion, a lot of the problems that we had in the bigger cities especially, is connected to missing outdated old lack of infrastructure, which for modern life is needed on the one hand, and so such places, for example, like Troyeshina in Kiev, for example, as a prominent. On the other hand, we have where the infrastructure is existing, we have quite a huge pressure of developments. Where does public life appear? Public life appears around places where the infrastructure, especially connected to with accessibility, appears. And there we have this huge pressure then with kind of dominant and economic aspects, and a lot of these problems appear, kind of a lack of coordination between infrastructure development and urban development, urban space in general. And I think this is something where really communities, municipalities, administration can work, do much better. With several, so on the one hand, this is really, Yuri was talking about the bottom-up processes. I think this is aspect of infrastructure is one sphere where the municipality can improve somehow top-down and bottom-up, so work together, because infrastructure is in the responsibility in a way of the public sphere, the municipality, but it depends and really is really important for everyone's life. And I think considering here in these processes the thoughts and needs of affected citizens, and can be much better. And in a way, I think we have here to bring in somehow the political aspects in the infrastructure. In Ukraine, for traditionally, I think probably it's from the Soviet modernistic system, infrastructure is kind of sphere of technocrats. Some calculations, they are probably outdated nowadays, standards also, and then it's hand over to the technocrats, and these projects are drawn, maybe in the end discussed, but it's really a very technocratic process. And I think here it starts on several levels. On the one hand, let people participate to create better design of infrastructure. I think it is also coming then to the normatives. We have a lot also, not only the transport infrastructure we see the problems, also infrastructure that we don't see, like sewage system and so, which in my opinion have outdated normatives, and maybe on the modern technologies, more oriented on modern technologies, it helps to shape better public places. Because all the distances and that you have by normatives, it shapes the big spaces, also for maybe the aspect of speed and traffic and all such aspects. They really have a big influence on the shape of the city, on the design of the city, but then also on this communication between citizens and public administration, technocrats, which especially in this sphere is lacking. And this is probably something where Vinica did quite a lot, tried, starting from with the tramways. Probably this was the main force to use this potential of investments in public infrastructure, connect with the community in this, and shape better public places. And I think this is especially relevant then in the process of reconstruction, where first is the infrastructure will be reconstructed. And here I think it's really important to work somehow different and better in the future than in recent years.
Так, насправді
Yes, so many ideas and things here that we will need for the recovery. I love about the institution's role. We'll talk about this, but I'd like to show you a photo and come to another issue, meaning the recovery issue. On the one hand, we have the destroyed cities, people mobilized. You know, can we have a photo right now? Okay, look what we have. And this photo, someone is admiring it. Someone says, great, it's so fast, you know, like Ukrainian people are unbeatable. On the other hand, what we have a lot of these banners. Still, nobody likes this, like, I call it a second Shanghai. And I have a question to you. What are the risks for the recovery? Okay, and this is the subway station. Like, they restored it, but again, what we have there in the back part, it's still sad, because again, this left bank ghetto I talked about. The issue is somewhere the authority needs to get these fast solutions, you know, to show that people have somewhere to live, they have places to return to, and we have to avoid those mistakes, not to rebuild it again, not to correct it again. So, how do you think? What is the risk of those fast solutions, you know, fast-made solutions, fast food solutions, and how to avoid these risks in recovery? Okay, Julian, we may start with you, and then I'll go to Hannah, maybe. We don't get the sound from you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I was off. My opinion is skeptical. We can't avoid this, because banners, these come from these poor 90s and beginning of 2000s. The key motive, the key message we had from the local MPs putting those banners, the legend they were presenting to people, like stimulating SMEs, small entrepreneurship. And again, it will be there, the banners, because we will have entrepreneurs trying to flourish again. How to put these layers together? I think the infrastructure layers, you know, big mega projects and this average routine daily life. I think that the key problem in Ukraine is that our designers, you know, of those bylaws, the drafters of bylaws, we have this like joke that it doesn't matter what party you want to get, you'll still have a communist party. Just checking all those errors that we had on the content, various plans and documents. And again, they first like check the errors, but then they do the very same thing. And what we have as a result, we draft the documents. What do you need to have a document? It's not even a diploma or education. It's like you must be an expert in that, a professional. We need to have this like broad community of experts when we speak about urban planning. The primary task for our cities after recovery to change, a collective inspection of all the documents that we had in the cities, you know, and I think the state can do it very cheaply. When we were working with Bandera Street in Lviv, first, we had an initiative. We had a negotiation agreement between the municipality and people. We have the joint project. Then we had a working group established with experts. These experts just were walking around the street, making conclusions. Then they decided whom to involve from local professionals, the dwellers, transport specialists, you know, just to listen to people, to research, to study that. Later to put some hypotheses and provide these hypotheses for the average dwellers with no education, no specialized education. For this to be fully transparent and clear, you know, and of course we had different response, like even ironic. People were asking, shall we have Wi-Fi put elsewhere in the street? But And we had really some really good feedback. And later we shaped the tasks. This is the chain. It's not hard to do. It's a whole chain. And now we hear again about these myths, like we need to have like another Jesus in each city. We believe in Jesus Christ, and now people think that we need to have a Jesus Christ per city, you know, to save these cities. The one who will come and do everything in a different way. We will never live like in a city like in London. London was shaping for decades, for centuries. A lot of schools, a lot of trends, a lot of changes, intellectual shifts, ideologies shifted. You know, of course, this is a cool expert, you know, like we can get an expert from London, one may attract investment, one may advise something. Why can't we check the documents first, you know, inspect these? We need to have a comprehensive analysis first of the regulatory documents. Then we should separate the layers. So we need to separate technical stuff from infrastructure stuff. The general plan is not backed by any economic or social strategies. It's just like some old school guys sitting, old school academics saying, let's take ways from Patton Bridge. Let's do like this. Let's have a tunnel. Let's do this. How much will it cost? Where should the city take money from? They don't care. They just fantasize about a perfect city. But we have something we need to calculate. Okay, sewage, filters, you know, water supply, electrification of the city. We need to think about it. This is the stuff where there's no place for discussions. This is based on principles of sustainable development and should be. But experts should do that. Experts who don't speak of space, but engineering like networks, transport algorithms and schemes. Public transport is more loaded. They have to understand it. Spatial stuff. Okay, with the spatial stuff, I think that the hierarchy of those documents, we have so many papers, we have so many acts and documents, and we have these economic plans and economic concepts of development bursting out when we have so many laws, and people just don't know what to take first. We need to separate this. Put these in different dimensions. Overlaying sometimes, but the responsibility should be allocated, not concentrated in one hands purely. And we can separate this. We can have this separation and we can distribute it. And these Shanghai cities, as we call it, okay, this may be a temporary phenomenon. We will not stop these banners. If people are poor, if they can't invest in a big nice shop, everything that saves like is a local market or these small shops with banners. So this photo does not give me any negative like connotation. These banners, the taste will change. It will be better. But to me, the banners are okay. People did something. People changed the situation. This is really a very good. This is really looks very good. Yeah, definitely. It's about short-term solutions. They have to survive first. These people but still plan these spatial solutions for future, where we want different standards, different tastes. And Zoya Kazanji at the previous session said that it's important to rebuild Ukrainian cities without Soviet crap, but, you know, with innovations. But these innovations require money, and they require involvement of those institutions who make decisions. And it's a question to Anna. What institutions today play a key role? Because quite often when we see some changes in the cities, I've talked recently to Ukrainian mayors, they all say about recovery and rebuilding, they know how, but then we can see that not everything is in the scope of competence of a mayor. What institutions how can we reconcile them? How can we establish this dialogue, broaden this dialogue? We see that there are different platforms for discussion of the solutions. Parliament is doing something, architects disagree. We have local level as well. What institutions today play the most important role? And how can we reconcile them? How can we marry them? Okay, thank you for the question. Definitely, if we didn't have this horrible destruction as we had in Ukraine because of Russian aggression, the answer would be obvious. Who is responsible for the construction, recovery, rebuilding? Local communities are responsible for their municipalities and cities, but for each of these processes, it requires a lot of money. Communities don't have the money. So it's more a question of like who's making decision and how to allocate the budget and how to prioritize. Just a couple of words about the law adopted recently by the Parliament, the draft law 7282, and it's better to read it in the comparative table at Верховна Рада website. So the plan of recovery for territories and communities and the plan for regional recovery, it actually introduces these two concepts. So this is the attempt to start eating an elephant piece by piece, let's say. For us to understand like how much money we do need and how to set the priority, we have to get all necessary, we have to get that horrible statistics, like what was destroyed, at what stage of destruction it is, the roofs and windows are fully destroyed premises, and what is the density of destruction. So we may have a case where a village where they had 15 houses completely destroyed, and there is a question. Is it a priority to rebuild this or a couple of multi-storied blocks in a small town nearby? That is why this law was adopted, and right now we design bylaws for it. It doesn't mean that nobody does anything. Absolutely not. Obviously, mayors of communities, they already have a lot of information they collected. Like in Podil district of Kyiv city, information about destruction was collected every day. For example, if we had shelling instantly, not only the state emergency service and police came, but also the district administration came as well, and they were recording all the destruction in a special table, and we made a map. I have the feeling, they collected, and I have the feeling that in autumn before winter we'll have a clear vision, a clear understanding about the scale of destruction. And these territorial communities will transfer their vision and of priorities and situation in the locality, in the region. So the state will accumulate money for recovery, for rebuilding, from international funds, from our budget. They will decide, I mean, the state will decide what is the priority for recovering a certain settlement, neighborhood, or a separate object, infrastructure object, and so on. So definitely, the important players are regional administrations, the Ministry of Territorial and Community Development, and the Cabinet of Ministers. They come to the fore, and the Parliament who will adopt the law and state budget. So I do understand that, first of all, we have to restore and rebuild transport infrastructure and educational and medical facilities. So this is something that will allow people, stimulate people to go back to their towns and cities. You know, it will make people return. It will stimulate them. This is unofficial information, but today I read that more than half of people who left Ukraine through Moldova to EU, they already came back, more than 50% of them. So it's really important, I think, that for them instantly, for them to be provided with these living conditions, not just their own house if it's destroyed, but a place to work, a place like a kindergarten for a child, a school with a shelter, an opportunity to commute to your workplace, you know, or a road to use while driving in your own car with a bridge, like for everything to be recovered. I think this is the primary thing, the priority. We'll see how the communities will define it and regions, how this will be discussed at the level of the cabinet. Can it lead to a conflict? Because like people will, we can't have everything as priority. Even in the comments, we have it like people are angry saying, why you speak of Bucha Irpin so much, but you don't talk about Hostomel or like other cities and towns. This allocation of budget and money, how transparent it will be. Won't it be a reason for conflict to grow, you know? Won't it fuel the feud? Won't it create the tension in the society? I think it will. We'll have problems and conflicts, yes. It's obvious, it's just obvious, you know? It's important. It's important to, when we were considering this draft law in the committees, it was a hard paper to consider, because there are some issues, there are some points I would never say yes in the peaceful time. It's wartime right now. We're trying to change our legislation, but we have this situation, we have the martial law, we have to do something. We have this is the reality. What we mentioned to defend, what we managed to defend, publishing these programs before the adoption. So we will have this full-scale public discussion for these recovery programs at all levels. It's still a lot complicated because so many people are not there, you know, in their locations. We have websites, we have internet, every person can enter a website of local council and take part in discussion. What we managed to do, what we managed to defend, it was a hard discussion to publish these programs before the adoption, and an opportunity to provide remarks and feedback from community. So I want everyone, I call for everyone who want to take part in this. We have so many people with different proposals. Some people say, I have construction materials. Some people say, I have certain expertise. Please check the websites of your local communities. I mean the destroyed, the communities where destructions took place. Take part in the discussions. Take part in the implementation process, okay? And of course, the regional program will be discussed as well. We'll have conflicts. We'll have it because it's about the quality of life. It's whether it's possible to still live in those places. That's important. We have a comment from our viewers, and I'll give you some of these comments later. We have a comment like the influence of regional administration. Their role will grow. They say the decentralization principle is destroyed by that. And I know that Urs basically, he observed that process. Urs, how do you think the decentralization, this decentralization should be saved, kept, or is this possible in the recovery process in Ukraine? Do we have these like temporary solutions that Anya says, that in peaceful times she says, I would never agree. That's why we make these exceptions today, you know, for the wartime, just for the general good.
Very good and interesting question. So first of all, I have to say I think it is important that as much as possible, decentralization has to be saved. And I think that in first place, it's the communities who should somehow to be in the lead of the say design or of the processes of reconstruction, but or also recovery, relief, because I think here it's also very important to think about the cities which don't have big destruction from the war, but have huge challenges, like because of internal displaced persons or of changes in the economy and so on. And I think here is the main, the big challenge. And here I'm unfortunately missing somehow at least I don't recognize, don't see a lot of action. So kind of a coordination between the local level and the state level, especially when you're talking about infrastructure. Of course, a lot of infrastructure questions, it's national infrastructure, and if we consider just from the inside, from the cities level, somehow, we have our principles, our ideas, plans for the futures, probably also people to stay in one place can be an opportunity for local development. On the other hand, are also the interests of the state for the development of the whole country. And so, and here I think this is not, for me, not a matter of decentralization or centralization. So still, I believe the decentralization should be safe, but the mechanism of this communication and joint planning also, when we talk maybe about the new general scheme for the planning of Ukraine, I think very important the mechanism how municipalities will participate in this process. Maybe also for referring to the example that you showed to make from, I think it's Makaris, from this reconstruct building. I think the solution would not be for such processes that we have some kind of state normative, so which say how this had to be done, because this is for me a very good example. I really like this example in a way which shows how also Ukrainian somehow democracy understands. So it's heart and hands. So immediately we build up what was destroyed. Probably also it looks quite similar like before. Because we act, we do act, and everything which is just management is somehow from a certain point. It's hard and it hinders somehow also the processes. So I think the important point then in this process is to bring in the sense of this. So if with a bit support, with also probably it's in first hand then the relation between private. As I understand, this was a private building, private enterprises, for example, and the public sector or local public sectors who can also think about there is more sense that just reconstruct. Also, this place this facility and shop can also be a place to meet. And then we have this additional and also the reshaping of the city of the cities to future needs, and not only the immediate needs which are now, but probably what we think about the transformation of Ukrainian cities more to a place a place of communication and all these processes. So I think these processes, they're only somehow manageable, feasible on local level. So that's why it's so important that recovery and reconstruction starts in processes on local level, which with support from outside, be it from experience from other Ukrainian cities, from European cities, also from international agencies or whatever. But I think that's the main task to bring in these connections which support the local level, which somehow connecting the shape of their community should be in the lead.
Ну, насправді тут важливі
So the communication spaces, again, we speak about involvement of people. Volodymyr Yermolenko told us that in those Soviet-type cities, there was no place to communicate. And this recovery may actually join people and involve them if they're involved. But we have risks. Yulian, you talk a lot about this. That Ukrainian cities today, they look for money on recovery. And we spoke to mayors of, like in Zhytomyr, mayor of Zhytomyr said that Portugal gives them money. So we had this event on recovering educational facilities. Chernihiv is looking for money. Mayor of Kashkai said that they are ready to provide money, and we read also that Georgian architects and urbanists even designed a school project for Ukraine. The risk of recovery when it is funded not from the budget, but from external funding. How can we avoid getting a lot of these gifts? Because, yeah, fast solutions mean fast money, but again, we don't want to spoil the cities. When we speak about new senses, we want new senses, but again, we will have so many senses coming as gifts from others, you know? Like with good intentions also, that we mentioned, but still. How to mitigate the risk? What do we need to do for these gifts? Not just be taken chaotically, but also to integrate it in the plans, you know, to see how these gifts are integrated. I agree with Urs, you know, decentralization, even during the war, is extremely important factor. And unfortunately, what I noticed in the president already, President associates decentralization with separatism. And when we separate the country, break the country into communities, but leaving them without money, this is a problem. If you visit different communities, you will see that these communities have their mentalities. I really like the motto of the previous German convocation. Strong cities, strong country. I guess that's what it was. Those who dealt with big projects or ministers and their deputies were consulting, let's say, mayors, like, how can they attract more money and use more money? It was not the question like, okay, we created new documents for you, please fill these documents out. But just asking, how can we help you? Mayors knew well. Our mayors know well as well what they need. Then you can decide who needs that more. I feel anxious. I worry that we will have this syndrome of the leaders syndrome. We will marginalize our society with this expected victory. They already had this great construction and great restoration previously, the project launched. There will be a huge temptation to become a leader in that as well, you know? When you just come to the community, like saying, I helped with the documents and mayor rebuilt the school. But a different thing is when you come to the village and say, I built your school. Saying that a president or minister did something. So this is the radicalization of processes. There is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for that. In the government I worked in, we had another rule there. We had this rule that each ministry, just to avoid the over-regulation, to transfer it to local level. it will lead us to a situation when communities and mayors will be like out of money, they will be poor. People will simply go to a mayor. It will be possible for them to talk with mayor, but nobody knows where the minister lives. So again, communities will turn into beggars in some way. You know, again, try to come to Kyiv to negotiate about receiving money. This is not even the worst scenario we can imagine right now. It's not even the worst thing we can get out of that, I observe. It's not about new laws about the plans, you know. It's not about creating new laws, but so we just need to have the data about what was destroyed, what's happening. But I don't even understand how the experts should fill this out. Well, we'll realize soon that we need to have these strategic issues to be there. But governments should invest in local initiatives, not like in those plans with tables to be filled out. So where there is a community which wants to like work and develop, so we just need to do it. Where it's okay to invest. We need to find those where it's okay to invest, where we can invest. So it's not like inviting a party which will take care of you. For us, it would be really, for mayors, it would be more simple to get the loans. And if again we allow the ministries to allocate the funds, I think this is a road to nowhere. I think the government should invest in the initiatives, in communities, in people, in their self-organization, and provide and teach mayors how to cooperate, you know, with international donors, and to design a program on how to legalize those funds in Ukraine. This should be a mechanism, functional mechanism. But again, but now it looks like we need to have a ministry as a mediator. It doesn't feel okay. It doesn't sound okay to me. So different cities have different experience, and we had a recent conversation on educational recovery. Zhytomyr's mayor said that they managed to create this international fund, and like they get the money and they started recovering. Due to various political reasons, like they can't create this mechanism because of their relations with the central authority, and it affects their success in recovery. It was a very good statement. I just wanted to say, but mayors who don't do it very well, they will find other donors, they will do it. This is how democracy works. What Verkhovna Rada is doing, they are strengthening the regional administrations. They have to disappear as a phenomenon, you know, and just be merged into the communities. And again, not to have these local leaders who would crush the mayors, you know, with their power and authority, like we had it with Mr. Sadovy in Lviv, when Poroshenko did not like Sadovy, you know. and there was a clash with the governor, and the city was flooded with litter, you know? Remember that situation. It wasn't just flooding the city, and again, there was a clash. We'll have the same thing. This is a road to totalitarian regime. Authoritarian, then totalitarian regime. This is a catastrophe. I think this is a nonsense. May I appeal to Julian? I don't always agree with the laws adopted by the parliament. I'm not always satisfied with the government's work, with mayors, and as a citizen I have a lot of criticism, and I criticize myself as well. But I can't understand why do we have it in our discussion, the statement that decentralization is being destroyed. So nobody's taking away the rights from communities to decide what should be there, what should not. Decentralization is there. Nobody's taking the money. Everything is like it was. So we have some communities and institutions that look for international grants and money. Nobody's forbidding to do that. But for us to understand the scale of the catastrophe, like how much money do we need to recover, these are different sources. We need to have statistics. Yes, they know it, they keep it, and it's okay, but the state has to collect the data as well and get the picture. If a business wants to relocate, getting out from the completely destroyed territory and where there were the hostilities, that's a way to find a place to relocate, and so on. So the situation is changing, data's changing, people migrate. Information is being accumulated in communities and then transferred to regions and government, for the government to see the situation. There is no treason there. I didn't mention treason. No, I didn't mention treason. There is a trend to accumulate power in regional administrations. There is a trend. We have it. Sorry, we have many people talking at the same time. Why the state statistics cannot ask the data like collected from different levels, region, city, and community? Why creating a law, a plan for regional recovery just to collect statistics? There is a part for planning directly. If there are substantial changes, it will become the prerequisite to create the urban planning documents. Communities are responsible for it. Nobody actually takes the right away. If it's the state budget, whom to allocate? There should be a general picture. I don't see any risks for decentralization at all. How will this general picture with data, how will it be integrated in the recovery? If we have people from Kharkiv, if they left Kharkiv, they don't want to return because they're afraid that in 5 years the war is to return. Will the local authorities bring them back? It's not a question to me. It's a question to a mayor, to a region. They should think, they should decide, asking people, asking their dwellers, like, will you return or not? Do you need this plant or not? Do you need this factory or not? We give them tools to discuss it and provide proposals. Or discuss the relocation of businesses from dangerous areas to peaceful areas. If we have like a safe area, if there are no like environmental restrictions, why can't we just have higher taxes locally? We speak of the state budgets. Local taxes is just not enough. You know, Julian, that not always it was enough in peaceful time. Not all communities were capable. But again, recovering after big destructions work different in different communities. Not each community will be capable, and we just have to understand that country cannot do everything at the state budget expense, with international grants without including private investment. It's unreal. We have a lot of debt as a country. Okay, we speak of the reality. We have some cities and towns destroyed to the ground. They want to get, like, they want to use any opportunity they can. Okay, the state says give us data. And they just collect data for half a year. They collect it. And what's next? What does it give? There must be also bylaws. And in the bylaws, they say that they have to create the plans. So, like, this is for the long-term perspective. We don't know when it happens, like, shall we have dwellers? But this should be done initially because we don't have premises destroyed there and the school is there. People have to use the school and children, but we are ready to give this land plot for business. This is the work for a community. They have to offer the plans. We have this discussion in the beginning when the draft law was registered. We had this discussion, so I insisted that we need to have the schemes, you know, the sketches, and this was a very emotional situation. This was May or June. Like, I have to do it very fast, very fast. I understand with my expertise that it won't be very fast, because not because we don't want to, this is the reality. At the state level, it's much longer. How to negotiate, like, with someone, how much time does he need? Like, one day to negotiate with a person, but for a city, for a state, you know, how to negotiate, how to get the agreement. This was an emotional situation. Like, okay, let's do it faster. Okay, we have September, and I hope that before the war we'll get these proposals from communities, from the regions. What are the prioritized objects for recovery? It's obvious that communities, they don't hesitate. Step by step, they're trying to recover something. But sometimes the whole neighborhoods are destroyed, or half a city, half a town, like half a town or half a village. They don't have money. That's why we need to have plans. I just want to touch upon that. And another perspective, another issue for the discussion, it's really important. We constantly say, like, what we need to do for people to return, recover, rebuild schools, hospitals as the key infrastructure. But what we observe, another process related to IDPs. Those people who left abroad, and Polish authority, for example, the Polish authority, they won't let these people go so easily because already people get some accommodations, they get services, they are employed, the same risk we have in Ukraine. I had an interview with Vinnytsia mayor. We spoke with him that during the relocation program they had many businesses coming, and it's highly likely these businesses will stay there. So a competition starts between the cities in this way. I know that in Ivano-Frankivsk you have more than 50 businesses relocated, maybe even more. I don't know, you will correct me. I just want to ask, these businesses, just like IDPs, how people from different changes, from different cities change the locations, change the environments. Maybe we'll have another requirement to infrastructure, maybe some more schools, more kindergartens, changing the quality of services, and it's about the dynamics of city development. Because if the war will last and nobody knows what's going to happen, the development of some cities will accelerate. For example, will someone return to Bucha or Irpin if they have a better environment like in Vinnytsia or other city? It's obvious that right now the war is correcting a lot of stuff, you know? Speaking of the internal movements in migration and external migration, we know that many people don't return in such situation. We know that we have this demographic forecast for Ukraine saying that the optimistic like 30 million, more pessimistic tell us like 25 million will have left. So we analyze the parameters and we try to understand how can we help that for those Ukrainians to stay within the country at least, to keep them there. Since February, we've been supporting the IDPs for people to stay at least here in the West, you know? But we understand that there are certain analytics telling that not everybody will return from Western to Eastern regions. And the migration waves will be there. It will take more time, and people will have no physical opportunity to return to their towns. It's quite sad, but from our perspective in Ivano-Frankivsk, we understand that this is a stress for the city, of course, because we have so many IDPs, the number of people is growing, and 20-30% more. But this is a potential for growth as well. The population growth parameter is really an important indicator. It's a prerequisite for economic development and social development. The positive thing is that the culture of different cities is shifting. We'll become even a more consolidated society then. And we have this mutual enrichment. People come to different cities, they relocate, and they bring something different. They bring their value there. That's the positive thing I see. And I just want to tell you that within the following 10 years, we'll be moving to 400, 500,000. We'll increase the number. 8 years ago, officially, we spoke of 200,000. So we're expanding the population, the city population, almost twice. This will be an absolutely different city, of course. Like 500,000 people in future. Like, these are two different cities, 200,000 and 500,000. But again, I'll repeat that we try to take not only our interests into account, so we don't try to steal talents, but we put efforts to help to activate as many IDPs as we can, because talents are emerging evenly. And during the war, like, this is my personal position, this is my responsibility. I feel that as soon as we have the recovery, as soon as we need the expertise to develop these intersectoral relations and interactions, we'll consolidate the team. We'll consolidate the team. We'll be there where they need us, in the places where they need us to help to recover. I don't know if I answered your question. We spoke in the previous discussion that people who live abroad, they, sorry for these obstructions, but yeah, we have another dweller who is very active. And people get used, while staying abroad, they get used to that environment. They really feel how good it is there for them. And right now, my child, elder child, is every day getting to kindergarten on the scooter, and it's really good experience. like my child is observing all that, you know, and the electric cars, and people will change their demands to their cities. They will like demand another quality of life. They will gather this experience, you know, of living in different surroundings. The people's attitude will change to the environment they live in. I have a question. The post-war Ukrainian city. Do we rebuild only the cities which are destroyed, like from the scratch, and this is really a hard work, a lot of money, returning people? Do we need to rebuild also the cities which weren't shelled by rockets? Because even Ivana Royce wrote about it. She's in Ivano-Frankivsk. She hasn't seen so many people with disability, for example, in Ivano-Frankivsk, you know? And it's about accessibility and inclusivity of cities. It's one of the weakest links, let's say, in the strategies, in all the strategies, and still this is like a Soviet heritage for us. We need also to rebuild, do we need also to rebuild those cities who weren't shelled by rockets? How do we do it? Maybe you have your opinions about this. It's a totally different experience. Maybe we'll lose these people who are about to stay in other countries with better urban environment.
Yeah, maybe I think one aspect is really, as you mentioned, these experiences which people who are now in Western Europe make concerning the urban environment. And probably their expectations from an environment in Ukraine. I think this is reacting a bit to what Yuri said. On the one hand, this is something where the Ukrainian cities now what to keep in mind. This is an opportunity also for them, because I think, and I also know it because such people are living with us now, and they make experiences, but not only as a consumer of such environment. They also learn or get ideas how to form such environment, how to work with this. And I think after all, in Western European city societies, it's quite hard to self-realize also, to realize ideas in a way, because as a newcomer, and probably this is also a way where they see in positive development in Ukrainian cities, where they see we can contribute to formation of such environment, to participate in the process of reshaping and developing the cities, and this can be to really bring them back. And I think this is the probably most important aspect for now for the cities, also to work somehow to prepare to prepare their institutions of the city administration, for example, for these processes, for this collaboration, also engagement of people. And I think this is where I'm a bit, I miss a bit here also the understanding in international agencies, development agencies. We have a lot of talks about the reconstruction of after the war, after the victory, and so on, but not so much really the support of local initiatives to really think. Also, Yuri mentioned it. The cities are now, a lot of cities are now, they have their challenges. They need solutions for this. These solutions, they, in a way, they prepare the ground for the further development, how to integrate these people in housing. So what kind of housing? We have also in Ivano-Frankivsk this Kohati project, which is a very good example, where now in a smaller scale to make some experiences of new organization of housing and spaces which has huge potential for the future and make the city attractive for people who will come back or who plan to stay in Ivano-Frankivsk. So in a way, how this cities will see, I think they will really different. It really depends a lot on this local engagement and the ability to integrate also people who are now not living in this place, but maybe were forced to emigrate abroad, who are originally for this place to also do now and afterwards the communication and the inclusion of them.
Ну, зараз взагалі ще такий новий.
We have a new dimension of city recovery, like the temporary residential areas. I don't think this is still a long-term solution, but what is really interesting, like in Lviv, they have a better exterior design than in some neighborhoods, you know, permanent neighborhoods. So it's interesting. They don't have these ones made of tires, at least, and painted with white paint, you know. So yeah, these temporary dwellings, they look much better. And someone says we need to have these eco-friendly settlements. This movement is developing as well. So we will see how it works. I just want quickly to ask a question, or maybe we have some comments from our viewers. And if you want to respond to some of these questions or comments, please pick one, because I don't know whom to refer each of these. Someone asks, like, it's not that sad, we're moving forward. Energy efficiency was being pushed for 10 years. But right now we can see that for communities it's really important. They simply need time for any movements. Can we speak about temporary dwellings, because temporary accommodation, because they offered for us to use these container models. I know that they talk a lot about this. What are other solutions? These containers, even in Lviv, one of the settlements that we've seen in Sikhiv, 300 people. But we speak of millions of IDPs. It's still not a solution anyway. What can be an alternative to these containers? Briefly, just briefly, because we need to finish soon. Okay, we had the proposals like to build a small model town for IDPs. And we said no, because we think that it's like building a ghetto. Quite often temporarily becomes permanent, and respectively, the community of people of the same cluster, they have the same problems. They live separately from the city-like dwellers. This is not an organic solution. It's incorrect. We just analyzed the under-constructed projects with 80% of readiness, and we told donors that it's really easier to complete the construction of these objects. We just mentioned this to be of the social quality, as we call it. Not maybe the highest quality, but still. These under-constructed objects are really good for the task. We just say that you can buy actual real apartments to these people. And respectively, those people will be organically integrated in this urban environment. We won't have these negative side effects of gentrification. For this ghetto not to have this ghetto with poor marginalized people. Yeah, like we don't want to create these. We also have a question about Kharkiv, and Julian mentioned Norman Foster today. So another remark. So In Kharkiv, we've been analyzing the problem. We still collect experts from different sectors to have this multilateral research and to create solutions. Municipality is actually helping, let's see, helping the enemy to destroy the city and like taking the tramways and doing some other stuff. We won't have a good result if we oppose the local administration or if they oppose us, but how can we find a way to, you know, cooperate? If you scream loud, they will hear you, as they say. The more active communities are, so when they go to administrations, when we have these riots and protests, when they block their work, it works. You need to convince as many people as you can that your opinion is not heard and there's an alternative, and change a mayor, then replace the mayor. Just, it's a global solution. And just replace, elect another mayor then. Thank you. Shall we have the strategic environmental assessment of recovery programs? I don't know, maybe Hanna will know. This was a subject of discussion. There will be no strategic environmental assessment. We have to understand that this is the first step for us to understand if we need any changes in urban documents, urban planning documents. Do we need to have new bunches of documents? We need to understand how serious should be the efforts for us to recover the territory. If we have the whole neighborhoods destroyed, it's obvious that we need to have new documents designed from the scratch, you know, with all the procedures. This was a big discussion, by the way, about it. Another comment. So this urgent demand for reconstruction will somehow ignore this approach to rational spatial planning. We are afraid of that. But we try to avoid this. And also a question like, who is making decisions about allocation the money for community reconstruction? Who is responsible for allocation? If we have one fund where all the money goes to, how the decision is made, like Chernihiv gets more, Mykolaiv gets more, or whatever. This is the request from the cities they describe, or how it works. Still, we don't have this like algorithm. It wasn't published still. And just to finish, it's not, maybe it does not relate to recovery, but still. Before the full-scale invasion, I personally had an impression that they don't tell all the truth to us, you know? When I was writing a children's book, it actually... Okay, so while we were fighting to get the high-quality water in the tap, nobody told us that in 10 years we'll have a bigger demand for the drinking water comparing to what infrastructure can give us. And we ignored the air quality and its influence on our health, you know, and we already have environmental crimes recorded everywhere. We know how negatively it affects health. In those regions where we had a lot of industry, they like ignored this because they wanted to get money. Waste management is a separate issue, and illegal waste drops and so on. Some mayors of, like, for example, the Paris mayor, she promotes this approach, the 15-minute city for everything to be easily accessible in 15 minutes. In Poland, they use a lot of electric transport to make it more environmentally friendly. We still have these shuttle buses which create extra pollution in the city as public transport. I have a question. On the one hand, we really want to rebuild the cities because people have to survive, people have to live. On the other hand, we have these tough issues related to energy efficiency, but we still have to think about future cities, you know, the innovative cities. Not just to survive, but to live. To actually have a wealthy, prosperous community. How to reconcile this? Can we actually, in the context of city recovery, everyone wants to get it fast, you know? But all these solutions I mentioned, it's super expensive as well. Can we take this into account? For us to have cities not for survival, but for life, high quality life. It's like a question for everyone just to finish. Okay, I will try to start. For me, it's always about the society, quality of the society. Definitely, well, what I wish, what we all wish, we want to think about future. Not thinking that in Ukraine we have worse prerequisites. Well, we are already a part of the global world, you know, of the global community. We can integrate the latest, the most innovative technologies and approaches in our urban development. If we speak of Frankivsk, Frankivsk basically has no demand for a recovery budget because, thank God, we have no big destructions, but we have a lot of to improve. Yeah, we do. And it stimulates us. We still look for we need to look for some smart solutions, alternative solutions. And without consolidation of community, it won't work. With joint efforts, we can do a lot. The recovery support will be a single time, like it will last for some period, but then it will be over. So, as experience shows, maybe it's not so important how much money we'll get, but how, if we are capable of actually using it properly and integrating it properly. The community which is consolidated and which creates optimal environment for its development and for attracting investment, for civic society development and other aspects which are necessary for this social entity, that community will get a perspective to have this permanent improvement of the quality and even become competitive at like a higher level, speaking of the quality of life. Still, we have, in Ivano-Frankivsk, we have to get drinking water of the highest quality. And the air quality as well to be monitored. If something goes wrong, for people to know about this, to affect this. 1, 2, or 3 international schools should be there. Yes, yes, absolutely. For example, we discuss right now the establishment of the community fund, local community fund, which should gather the nucleus of the community, you know, the activists, to have these millions of internal funds accumulated and to use it to build social infrastructure like schools, kindergartens, I know, university, library, sports center, and whatever. And this is the alternative approach. We've been discussing it with business association, with local self-government, with civic society, and step by step we move forward. And if this tool works, this will be like a perpetuum mobile, you know, for the community, not relying on external donors, but just doing it themselves more and more. I also agree that the state should work with state projects and and provide all necessary authority to localities, to local communities, and not to take money away from local budgets. Invest not in premises, but in initiatives. Initiative people can bring a lot on their shoulders, a whole country. Because if you start destroying these ideas and initiatives at the top, then it's just a tragedy. Invest at a maximum point in ideas. Like that Kohata initiative, you know, if you have these active, proactive people there, please, you have people who can work, who can generate ideas, invest in them. Competitions where you can do it. Deregulation, maximum deregulation. That's what we need. So, what do we need for people returning from Zurich to Vinnytsia, to Черкаси? I don't want to say Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, but again, Черкаси at least. Or Uzhhorod, Khmelnytsky.
So I think, first of all, and also referring a bit to your question concerning the environment. First of all, I think these are all the cities that you mentioned. They are somehow beautiful and different from each other. And one of the aspects, I think, also where they make a difference to our cities look here is somehow how how they are embedded in the environment, the green environment, how they, for example, in these cities, it's Uzhhorod or Vinnytsia, you don't have the waterfront. So you have the rivers, and then you have a green part, and then comes the city. And here everything is capitalized and close to the water. And I think here we have a bit a trend which is going on also in the aspects of climate change and so, where a lot of people they really get more and more these aspects of the big green corridors, for example, in the cities, which are important for them and give some special quality. Of course, then it's the questions: how clean are they, and so and then here I think there is huge potential in technology. And Ukraine is a Ukrainian people, Ukrainian society is very advanced also in technology. And then when here in environmental aspects, I think for so far in legislations, it was one of the, again, it's my opinion, I'm not an expert, it's more an opinion, but it's really a bit altruistic, outdated approaches. We have a lot just of simple, there are some distances to be, for example, because of noise, 20 meters or something, no matter what kind of noise. You could be, so you don't really react to the question, to the problem, but you just make some some regulations. And I think with technologies, all this what you mentioned, there is huge potential, that in active the cities can react. And then the third point, I really I think now people in Western Europe and all around the world, they learn what I mentioned, Ukrainians, the heart and hand, a place where I believe after the victory will be attractive. You mentioned for a while it was the New Berlin, Kiev, the New Berlin. I think it's this is not so important, but really a place where you can build something for the future. Where really, I think it's a new trajectory for developments in global development. So I think if somehow Ukrainian state and Ukrainian communities are available to deal with these aspects, then it will be attractive for many persons to discover their future in Ukraine.
Anya, can you add something to it? I think that And of course, we'll have new requirements. And we'll have new demands and requirements to the city administration regarding the quality of life in cities. If a person never saw how it works, well, if you don't know that there is an alternative, we can say yes. If a person lives for half a year abroad and just sees how it can be done in a different way, you know, after coming back, the person will ask for it. And this forced evacuation will be a stimulus for people to educate themselves, to raise their awareness, to expand their horizons. They will see what civilization can actually bring to urban spaces. This can be a huge stimulus for us, of course. Thank you so much. Definitely, to me, it seems that there will be so many challenges in this recovery process. We spoke of funding and transparency of funding, and coming from decisions to implementation, algorithms are really like the Yurko's quote. Spatial solutions to reflect society, reflect community. Maybe right now we have so many small shops and banners and it's really flamboyant, but we have to remember that what the space we live in, it actually reflects us, you know, our identities. I feel a little bit like, well, I envy Polish people because they are our neighbors, but they're really different. Yes, they stick to the rules. Well, someone violates the rules, but there is a punishment and liability for the violations, and everything improves eventually. I really want us to actually get the surge, you know, and to get proper spatial solutions, and for cities to finally create these islands of normality, you know, to create new tastes, to create new culture eventually, for the society to become more even, to homogenize in a certain way, and for us to become a part of the process of recovery. I'm so grateful to all of you, dear friends, for your professionalism, for your contributions. Thank you for your valuable work, and I do hope that we all will be heard, and that all together we'll do much more to improve the situation. Thank you.